What happens when a man who has everything decides it's not enough? Gregory Shaw was a master of the universe, a high-flying wealth manager with a perfect, beautiful wife, Caroline. But he traded her in for a younger model, Sienna. He thought he was upgrading his life. He didn't realize he was just a self-made man who had in fact been made by his wife's family. He thought he was dumping the quiet, comfortable Caroline Davenport. He was actually declaring war on the Davenports. And the Davenports, they don't lose. This is the story of how a man's pride led him to the penthouse, and how one family threw him from the top floor without ever touching him. Gregory Shaw loved the smell of new leather. It was the scent of success. He breathed it in from the back of his midnight blue BMW 7 Series, a car he'd earned by closing the Reynolds importing deal. At 42, Greg was the youngest senior partner at Sterling Price Investments. He had a razor-sharp part in his dark hair, a collection of Swiss watches that rivaled a jeweler's display, and a jawline that still held strong thanks to rigorous, twice-daily gym sessions. He was by every metric he cared about a resounding success. His wife Caroline was part of that success. She was, he often thought, the perfect corporate wife. She was 40, but possessed a timeless, understated beauty. She wore beige cashmere and simple pearl earrings, her blonde hair always in a tasteful low chignon. She ran their Greenwich, Connecticut home with effortless precision. She was a Davenport. The name had a quiet, old-world resonance in New England. Good stock, Greg's father had called her. To Greg, good stock meant comfortable. He knew her family had money. It was obvious in the way she never looked at price tags in the modest trust fund she'd used as a down payment on their first home, in the easy, boring way her father, Harrison Sr., would talk about gifting a new wing to the local hospital. They were comfortable. Greg was ambitious. The two were not the same. Greg's ambition was a hungry, gnawing thing. He didn't just want comfort, he wanted impact. He wanted to be the man people whispered about. He craved the sharp, electric thrill of a new acquisition, a new deal, a new anything. Lately, that new anything had a name: Sienna Hayes. Sienna was 25. She was a new associate in his firm's marketing department. Where Caroline was cashmere and pearls, Sienna was leather and blood-red lipstick. She was all sharp angles, quick laughter, and a hungry ambition that mirrored his own. She looked at him not with the placid, supportive gaze of Caroline in-law, but with the raw, undisguised admiration of a woman looking at a winner. Their affair started, as they so often do, with a mentorship lunch. It escalated during a business trip to Chicago. It was now a raging fire, fueled by stolen afternoons in a boutique hotel room overlooking the park, the kind with a $40 a bottle sparkling water in the mini-fridge. "You're incredible, Greg," Sienna whispered, tracing the lapel of his Zegna suit one rainy Tuesday. "The way you handled that Taggart client. You didn't just advise him, you commanded him." Greg let a small, satisfied smile play on his lips. "It's just about seeing the angles, Sienna, knowing what people want before they do." "And what do you want, Greg?" Her eyes, a bright, startling blue, held his. He thought of his perfectly beige, perfectly predictable, perfectly dull life with Caroline. He thought of her quiet dinners, her talk of the children's school fundraisers, her gentle reminders about his blood pressure. He compared it to the raw electric jolt of Sienna's touch, the smell of her black opium perfume, the way she made him feel like the predator he knew he was. More. he said, his voice a low growl. "I want more." That evening he drove home to Greenwich. The house was, as always, perfect. The landscaping was immaculate. The lights were a warm, welcoming yellow. Caroline was in the kitchen, a cavernous space of white marble and stainless steel. She was helping their 9-year-old son, Thomas, with his geography homework. "Hey," she said, smiling, pushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "You're late. Everything okay at the office?" "Just clients," he said, loosening his tie. "You know. Well, dinner's ready. I made that salmon you like with the dill sauce." He looked at her. The perfect wife. The perfect home. The perfect budding gilded cage. He looked at the salmon. He looked at the beige sweater. And he felt a sudden sharp surge of revulsion. "I'm not hungry," he said. His tone was sharper than he intended. Caroline's smile faltered just for a second. "Oh. Okay. Well, I can save you a plate." "Don't. I'm going to go for a drive." He turned before he could see the hurt in her eyes. He walked back to his BMW, the car that smelled of new leather and success. He pulled out his phone and texted Sienna. "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. Us. This is what's real." Her reply was almost instantaneous, a single chili pepper emoji. Greg Shaw put the car in gear and peeled out of his own driveway, his tires spitting gravel on the perfect lawn. He was a master of the universe, and he was finally going to take what he truly deserved. He was going to get more. The next 3 months were a masterclass in duplicity. Greg Shaw operated on a new level of energy, fueled by adrenaline and the thrill of his double life. He was a lion at the firm closing 2 of the biggest accounts in Sterling Price's history. He was a phantom at home, a man of half-eaten dinners, late-night conference calls, and vague excuses about market volatility. Caroline, in her quiet way, tried to bridge the chasm. She suggested a weekend in Vermont, like we used to. Greg claimed a client emergency. She bought tickets to the symphony. Greg forgot and scheduled a strategy dinner with his team, which was just him and Sienna at a trendy new fusion restaurant. The more Caroline tried to hold on, the more Greg despised her for it. Her gentle patience, which he once found calming, now felt like a lead weight. Her good stock felt like a chain. Sienna, meanwhile, was all forward momentum. "Greg, have you seen the listings for the new Astra Tower?" Sienna showed him her phone over brunch. They were at a rooftop bar, the kind of place where the mimosas were $28 and the clientele were all under 30. The penthouses have private plunge pools. Private. Can you imagine? Greg could imagine. He imagined a life of sleek, modern lines, of floor-to-ceiling glass, of not having to look at Caroline's sentimental antique furniture, which he always felt was just old. "We'd look good up there," Sienna purred, sipping her drink. "We would," Greg said, his mind already calculating. The breaking point came at the annual Children's Legacy Gala, the largest fundraiser of the year for the hospital. It was, for all intents and purposes, Caroline's event. Her mother, Isabella Davenport, was the chairwoman of the board. The event was the Davenports. Greg hated it. He hated the chicken or fish dinners. He hated the forced politeness. He hated the way these men, old soft men, who had inherited their wealth, would pat him on the shoulder and call him son, as if he weren't the one actively creating wealth while they just existed. "Greg, darling, you remember Carter Reynolds?" Caroline was at his elbow, a vision in a deep emerald gown. Greg turned. "Carter Reynolds of Reynolds. importing the deal he'd personally closed. Carter, a man in his late 60s with a face like a friendly bulldog, beamed at him. Greg. The man of the hour. My boy, I don't know what you did, but my portfolio hasn't looked this good since the 90s. Greg gave his best "aw shucks" smile. Just doing my job, Carter. Glad you're happy. Happy I'm ecstatic. You know. Carter leaned in. I was hesitant at first. Sterling Price is a fine firm, but, well, let's be honest. It was Harrison Davenport's personal call that sealed the deal for me. He said, my son-in-law is the sharpest mind in the state, and I'm putting my own assets with him. Well, that was good enough for me. Greg's smile froze. Harrison Sr. had called Carter. His father-in-law. He thought he had landed Reynolds. He thought it was his pitch, his strategy. The realization that it might have been a simple phone call from Caroline's father landed like a punch to the gut. It made him feel small, like a kid who'd been given a win. He looked over at Caroline, who was blissfully unaware, chatting with another couple. He suddenly saw her, not as his wife, but as a symbol of his own inadequacy. A living reminder that he hadn't perhaps done it all on his own. His anger, cold and immediate, needed a target. Later that evening he was standing by the bar when a text came through. Sienna. Bored. Thinking of you. Wish I was there in a killer dress. He typed back, his thumb jabbing the screen. You should be. This whole thing is a joke. Gregory. He jumped, shoving his phone in his pocket. It was Isabella Davenport, his mother-in-law. She was a tall, imposing woman, draped in diamonds that were clearly real. Her smile never, ever reached her eyes. Isabella. Wonderful party, as always. It is, she said, her eyes flicking to his pocket. You seem distracted, Gregory. I do hope you're not finding our little charity boring. Not at all, he lied smoothly. Just checking on the Asian markets. They open early. Ah yes, the markets. She took a sip of her champagne. You've been doing so well, Gregory. We're all so impressed with how far you've come since you joined our family. There it was again. Joined our family. The implication was clear. We made you. He was suffocating. He turned, looking for Caroline. He found her by the silent auction tables, laughing with her brother, Harry Davenport, Jr. Harry was the one he liked least, where Harrison Sr. was old-world class. Harry was a shark in a Savile Row suit, the C-suite operator who ran Davenport Global Holdings DGH with ruthless efficiency. Greg strode over his face, a mask of polite fury. Caroline, he said, not bothering to greet Harry. We're leaving. Caroline's laugh died. Leaving, Greg, it's not even 10. My mother is giving her speech soon. I don't care. I have an early day. We're going. His voice was low, hard. Harry's eyes narrowed. He was taller than Greg and stood up straighter. Everything all right, Greg? You seem a bit flushed. I'm fine, Harry. Just tired of the party. He grabbed Caroline's arm a little too tightly. Let's go. Caroline flinched. The music seemed to dim. He saw Carter Reynolds staring. He saw Isabella Davenport, her face like a marble carving, watching from across the room. He didn't care. He was done. He was done with their world, their rules, their patronizing help. The car ride home was a symphony of silence. The new leather smell in the BMW suddenly felt suffocating. As they pulled into their perfect driveway, Caroline finally spoke, her voice trembling. "What was that, Greg? You embarrassed me. You embarrassed us." "I embarrassed you." He slammed the car into park. "I'm suffocating, Caroline, in this perfect beige life, this comfortable life you and your family have built for me. Built for you, what are you talking about? We built this together." "No. You built it. Your father made a phone call." "I'm just the son-in-law. The pet broker you all get to pat on the head. Look how far he's come," he sneered, mimicking Isabella. Caroline stared at him, her face pale. "Greg, that's not true. My father, he believes in you. We all do." "Well, I don't need his belief," he roared, finally giving voice to the dragon of his pride. "I don't need any of it. I don't need the house, I don't need the club, and I don't need you." The words hung in the air, cold and deadly. Caroline's face crumpled, then hardened. The tears that welled in her eyes she refused to let fall. She simply stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. "Get out," she whispered. "What? Get out of my house." "Your house?" He scoffed, but a sliver of fear pierced his rage. "This is our house." "No, Greg," she said, her voice finding a strength he'd never heard. "The down payment was my trust. The house is in my name. I was advised to do that in case of this. Get out." He stared, dumbfounded. He had been so busy building his new life that he never realized the foundation of his old one was not what he thought. "Fine." He spat, his pride stinging more than the rejection. "Fine. This is a favor. You're saving me the trouble." He went inside, past a stunned-looking Thomas, who had woken from the noise and packed a single expensive leather overnight bag. He stormed out, got back in his BMW and peeled away again. He drove straight to Sienna's tiny, generic apartment. He buzzed, and she opened the door wearing a silk robe. "Greg, what are you—" He pushed past her, dropped his bag, and grabbed her. He kissed her hard, a kiss of anger and liberation and desperation. "I left her," he said, breathing hard. "It's done. I'm free." Sienna's eyes widened, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Oh, Greg," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "It's about time. Let's order champagne." As he held her, Greg Shaw felt a giddy, terrifying rush. He'd done it. He'd burned the bridge. He was his own man, finally and completely. He was on top of the world. The next day, Greg Shaw walked into the offices of Sterling Price, not as a man who had just blown up his 15-year marriage, but as a king returning to his throne. The anxiety of the previous night had burned away, leaving a cool, clean certainty. He was free. His partner, Ben Kitteridge, a perpetually stressed man with a paunch, pulled him aside before the morning meeting. "Greg, saw you and Caroline leave the gala in a hurry. Everything. Okay, Isabella Davenport looked like she could freeze fire." Greg adjusted his tie, a new one, a bold crimson red. "Everything's fantastic, Ben. Crystal clear. Caroline and I are separating." Ben's jaw dropped. "What? Greg, are you insane? The Davenports. You don't just separate from the Davenports. They're your biggest client. Harrison Sr.'s portfolio is half your book." Greg laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "First Harry Jr. manages the real DGH money in-house. I just handle Harrison's personal fund, which is a rounding error for him. Second, I've got Reynolds. I've got the Taggart brothers. I've got the new Whitaker endowment. I don't need Harrison's pocket money." "Greg," Ben pleaded, "think about this. The optics, the..." The optics, Greg interrupted, are that I'm a man taking control of his life. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm moving into the Astra Tower. I have to call the leasing office. He left Ben sputtering in the hallway and strode into his office, the one with the corner view. He was high on his own power. He called Sienna. "It's done," he said, putting his feet up on his mahogany desk. "Meet me for lunch. We're celebrating, and we're apartment hunting." The divorce proceedings began with a predictable chill. Greg, feeling magnanimous, offered what he considered a generous settlement. He'd let her keep the house, which he now knew was hers anyway, and he'd provide a handsome child support package for Thomas. In exchange, he wanted a clean break. He wanted it fast, and he wanted it quiet. His lawyer, a shark named Rick Feldman, had warned him. "Greg, this is too easy. The Davenports aren't rolling over. Caroline's lawyer is from that firm, Kessler, Lynch and Associates. They don't do easy." "They will this time," Greg insisted. "She's not a fighter. She just wants it to be over." The first meeting was held at the Kessler, Lynch and Associates offices, a building that looked more like a fortress of old money than a legal practice. Greg and Rick sat on one side of a table so long it could have hosted a state dinner. Caroline entered, flanked by two lawyers. One was a severe-looking woman in her 60s. The other was her brother, Harry Davenport, Jr. "What is he doing here?" Greg hissed to Rick. "This is a conflict of interest." "It's not," Rick whispered back. "He's here as a family advisor." "Shut up, Greg." Caroline looked different. She was wearing a sharp, dark blue pantsuit. Her hair was down, not in its usual chignon, and it gave her an air of authority he'd never seen. She looked, he realized, with a jolt like her brother. "Gregory," she said, her voice as cool as the marble in the lobby. "Thank you for coming." "Let's just get this over with," Greg said, projecting boredom. "The offer is on the table. It's more than generous." Caroline's lead lawyer, the severe woman, simply slid a single piece of paper across the table. It wasn't a counteroffer. It was a list. Rick Feldman picked it up. He read it, and all the color drained from his face. He passed it to Greg. It was a list of Greg's assets. But it wasn't just his salary and his 401k. It was everything. The Reynolds Importing Account, commission value, none. 2M, the Taggart Brothers account. Commission, value 980k. The Whitaker Endowment. Projected retainers, 550 annum. The unvested stock options at sterling price. The 529 College Fund for Thomas Shaw. Beside each of the major accounts was a small, chilling annotation. Reynolds Importing acquired via personal introduction from Harrison Davenport, Sr. Jan 20 and 23. Taggart Brothers, referred by DGH subsidiary. Apex Logistics, June 2022. Whitaker Endowment Board. Seat held by Isabella Davenport. September 2023. Greg's blood ran cold. This wasn't a divorce settlement. This was an audit. This was a receipt. "What is this?" Greg tried to bluster. "These are my clients. I brought them in." Harry Davenport, Jr. spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, almost bored. "No, Greg. You serviced them. We placed them. There's a difference." Harry leaned forward. "You see, Greg, my family believes in loyalty. We believe in taking care of our own. For 15 years, you were our own. My sister loved you, so we made sure you were successful. We made sure the right doors opened. We made sure the right people took your calls. We gave you the assists, All you had to do was make the basket." He paused, his eyes like steel chips. "You had a good game, but you mistook the assists for your own talent." "This is ridiculous," Greg said, his voice shaking slightly. "You can't. These are my clients." "Are they?" Harry smiled, a thin reptilian expression. "Well, that's a theory. Let's test it." He looked at Caroline. "Caroline, what do you want?" Caroline looked at Greg. Her eyes were not filled with tears or anger. They were empty. It was the emptiness that terrified him. "I want what I am owed," she said, her voice clear. "He built a new life on the back of the one we gave him. He's moving into the Astra Tower with his associate. He's planning a future." She slid a second piece of paper across the table. This one was from the leasing office of the Astra Tower. It was his application for the penthouse, the one with the plunge pool. It listed his projected income, an astronomical figure based on the commissions from Reynolds, Taggart, and Whitaker. "I want him to have exactly what he deserves," Caroline said. "Nothing more, and nothing less." Greg looked at Rick, frantic. "They can't do this." Rick Feldman was slowly packing his briefcase. "Greg, my advice is to take the first offer. The one you made. Take it and walk away. Now." "What? You will work for me. And I'm telling you as your lawyer, this is not a fight you can win. This is a cost of doing business negotiation, and you've just been declared bankrupt. They're not just divorcing you, Greg. They're liquidating you." Greg looked back at the Davenports. Caroline was staring at her hands. Harry was checking his Patek Philippe watch. This is a shakedown," Greg yelled, standing up. "Sit down, Gregory," Harry said, not even looking up. "You're embarrassing yourself. We're not shaking you down. We're just correcting the ledger." Harry finally looked at him. "You wanted a clean break. You wanted to be your own man. Congratulations. As of, well, let's say tomorrow, you will be. My father and my mother and I, we're just divesting from you." "Is that a threat?" Greg snarled. "No," Harry said, standing. "It's a quarterly report, and your numbers are way down." He helped Caroline with her chair. She stood, never making eye contact with Greg, and walked out. Harry followed, pausing at the door. "Oh, and Greg," he said, a polite, venomous afterthought. "The house in Greenwich, Caroline is selling it. Seems the market is unusually high. You have 30 days to retrieve your personal effects. Good luck with the Astra Tower. I hear the co-op board is very particular." The door clicked shut. Greg and Rick sat in the cavernous, silent room. "Rick," Greg said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "What just happened?" Rick Feldman snapped his briefcase shut. "What happened, Greg, is you just brought a knife to a nuclear war. You thought you were divorcing a quiet suburban wife. You've just declared war on a global corporation. My retainer is paid up. I'm done. Find a new lawyer." Rick walked out, leaving Greg Shaw alone at the massive table, staring at a piece of paper that had just turned his entire life into a lie. Greg Shaw was a fighter. He wasn't some soft trust fund kid like Harry Davenport. He was Greg Shaw. He'd built himself up from nothing. So they wanted a war fine. "He's bluffing," he told Sienna that night, pacing her small white-on-white apartment. The cheap champagne from the night before felt like a distant memory. "Harry's a bully. He's trying to scare me. Correcting the ledger. What a joke my clients are with me because of me. my performance, my numbers. Sienna, who had been painting her toenails a shade of neon pink, looked up. So, that list, they can't actually take those clients, right? Of course not, Greg scoffed. This is America. This is capitalism. They can't just take my book. I have contracts. I have relationships. Good, she said, her smile returning. Because I just put a deposit down on a new couch for the Astra. It's Italian leather. You'll love it. Exactly, he said, pulling her close. This is our time. He's just noise. They're all just noise. He doubled down. He spent the next week in a frenzy of activity. He took Carter Reynolds to a $1,000 a plate steak dinner. Carter, my man, Greg said, pouring a glass of eye-wateringly expensive Cabernet. I just want you to know I'm going through some personal changes, a divorce. But it's not going to affect our business. If anything, I'm more focused than ever. Carter Reynolds, his face ruddy, clapped Greg on the back. Son, I don't care about your personal life. I care about my ticker, and my ticker is up. Keep doing what you're doing. Greg grinned. See a joke, a bluff. He called the Taggart brothers. He met with the Whitaker Endowment's COO. Everyone was happy. His performance was undeniable. The Davenport threat was just the pathetic flailing of a jilted family. He and Sienna moved into the Astra Tower. The co-op board interview had been strange. The board president, a man named Arthur Pierce, had looked at Greg's financials with a cold, appraising eye. Impressive numbers, Mr. Shaw, Pierce had said. Very volatile, but impressive. Your sterling price correct. Senior partner, Greg said, puffing his chest. I know. Of sterling price, Pierce said. We'll be in touch. But 2 days later, the approval came through. Greg and Sienna moved into the penthouse. It was magnificent. The city skyline was laid out at their feet. The plunge pool was, as Sienna noted, to die for. They threw a party. They invited all of Greg's colleagues except Ben Kitteridge, who was being weird, and all of Sienna's young, beautiful friends. It was a perfect crystalline moment of triumph. Greg stood on his new terrace, a glass of champagne in hand, Sienna on his arm. He looked out at the city. His city. Told you, he whispered to her. Top of the world. The first crack appeared on a Monday. Greg was in his office admiring the view, which was, he noted with satisfaction, slightly better than his old one, when his assistant, a nervous young woman named Chloe, buzzed him. Mr. Shaw, Mr. Reynolds is on line 1. He sounds upset. Greg frowned. Upset Carter was never upset. He picked up the phone. Carter, what's happening? You see that jump in tech this morning? Greg. Carter's voice was gravelly. I'm pulling my money. Greg dropped his pen. What? What are you? Did you see the quarterly reports? We're up 18%. I don't care about the reports, son. I got a call this morning. From Harrison Davenport. Greg's blood turned to slush. Carter, listen to me. This is a personal matter. His daughter, my wife, we're getting a divorce. He's trying to hurt me. He's being petty. I don't know what it is, Greg, Carter said, and for the first time he sounded cold. But what I do know is that Harrison Davenport Sr. is on the board of the Port Authority, and my entire business is Reynolds Importing. My import-export license is my docking priority. These things are under review. All of a sudden, after 20 years. He can't do that. He's not. Of course not. Carter said, his voice heavy with sarcasm. It's just a routine audit of my business. A business that suddenly has irregularities. The same day Harrison calls me just to say hello, and mentions how disappointed he is in the younger generation's lack of loyalty. You get me, Greg? Carter. Please. I'm sorry, son, I really am. I like you. But I like my company more. My assets are being transferred to a new firm. Don't call me. The line went dead. Greg stared at the receiver. 1.2 million in commissions. Gone. He was sweating. He was actually sweating. Chloe, he yelled. Get me Jerry Taggart. I can't, Mr. Shaw. Chloe's voice was small, shaky. What do you mean, you can't dial the damn phone? His office called this morning to say they were transferring their portfolio. They're moving to Morgan Stanley. Why? Greg whispered, a horrible, sinking feeling in his stomach. Their primary logistics carrier, Apex Logistics, they just terminated their contract, cited breach of terms. The Taggarts, they said they were over-leveraged and had to liquidate some assets to cover the I don't know, the freight disruption, Apex Logistics, the DGH subsidiary. Greg's hands were shaking. He pulled up his client list. Reynolds, Taggart. Who was next? The phone buzzed again. Chloe again. Mr. Shaw, it's Ben Kitteridge. He needs to see you, now. Ben walked in, his face grey. Greg, we have a problem. I know we have a problem, Greg snapped. I'm losing clients. No, Greg, Ben said, sitting down heavily. We have a problem. The Whitaker Endowment just pulled their money. This was impossible. The endowment was a board. It took months to make a decision like that. Why? Greg asked. Isabella Davenport, Ben said. She's not just on the board, Greg. She's the founder. Her mother was Whitaker. She is the endowment. She called an emergency session this morning, motioned to divest from any and all firms with high-risk profiles and questionable ethical foundations. Questionable ethics. That's slander. Is it, Greg? Ben looked at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. The motion passed unanimously. They're gone. Greg, that's 40% of our new acquisitions for the entire year. Greg stood up his chair, scraping violently. He walked to the window. The beautiful, clear view suddenly seemed hazy. They did this, he whispered. They actually did it. Greg, Ben said, his voice low. The partners are meeting this afternoon. You need to get ahead of this. Call Harrison. Apologize. Beg. I don't care. Fix it. Because, Greg, they're not just correcting the ledger. They're burning the whole goddamn book. The final smallest crack appeared on his phone. A text from Sienna. OMG. Got the bill for the Italian sofa. It's $30,000. But it's non-refundable. Had to use my personal Amex. You'll pay me back, right? Greg looked at the text. He looked at his skyline view. He thought of the plunge pool. He thought of Carter Reynolds. He thought of Harrison Davenport's polite, dead voice. He wasn't on top of the world. He was standing on a trapdoor. And the Davenports had just pulled the lever. Panic is a cold, metallic taste. For Greg Shaw, it tasted like the $15 cup of coffee. He was now stirring his hand, shaking so violently that the black liquid sloshed onto the glass table of his new penthouse. Fix it, Ben had said. How do you fix a nuclear bomb? He called Harrison Sr.'s office. He was told Mr. Davenport is in a board meeting. for the foreseeable future. He called Harrison's private line, the one he'd been so proud to have. It went straight to a disconnected message. He called Harry Jr.'s office at DGH. He was put on hold for 20 minutes, forced to listen to a Vivaldi loop, before a crisp assistant informed him, "Mr. Davenport's schedule is committed through the next quarter." He tried to call Caroline. He wanted to. What? Yell, beg, apologize. He didn't know. Her number, the one he'd had memorized for 15 years, was also disconnected. He was an island, and the tide was coming in. The partners' meeting was a bloodbath. He walked in, trying to project his usual confidence, but the faces that looked back at him were not friendly. They were terrified, and they were looking for a sacrifice. "Greg," said the senior partner, an old hawk-nosed man named Robert Sterling. "Explain your book, now." Greg tried. He blustered. He talked about short-term volatility and personal conflicts and market corrections. Ben Kitteridge, his friend, just sat there staring at his legal pad. "So what you're saying's," Robert Sterling summarized, his voice dripping with ice, "is that you personally antagonized the single most powerful family in this state, and in doing so have vaporized 3 of our anchor accounts in 48 hours. It's not. I built those accounts," Greg protested, his voice high. "You cost us those accounts." Another partner, a woman named Janice, snapped. "My clients are calling. They're asking if Sterling Price is stable. They're asking why our senior partner is in a public feud with Isabella Davenport." "My God, Greg, do you know what she is?" "She's not just a charity person. She's the gatekeeper. She's the social center of gravity for all of our clients." Greg realized with dawning horror that Caroline's quiet, boring mother was the linchpin of the entire New England financial social ecosystem, and he had just called her daughter. Well, he'd just discarded her. "We're done," Robert Sterling said. "The partners have voted. You're out. We're activating the moral turpitude clause in your contract." "Moral turpitude," Greg shrieked. "I had an affair." "Half this room is on their 3rd wife. You didn't have an affair, Greg," Janice said, standing up and gathering her papers. "You had an affair with an employee, which is a sexual harassment liability. And you did it while divorcing a Davenport, which is just terminal stupidity. Clean out your desk. We'll mail you your things." He was escorted out. His building pass was deactivated. His company email was shut down before he even reached the elevator. He stood on the sidewalk in his $3,000 suit, holding his briefcase. He had been a senior partner at 10:00 a.m. By 11:30 a.m. he was nothing. He went home to the Astra Tower, home to Sienna. He found her in the living room, surrounded by boxes, not his boxes, her boxes she was packing. "Sienna," his voice cracked. "Oh, thank God," she said, not looking at him. She was on the phone. Yes, I know the sofa is non-refundable. I'll take the store credit." She hung up and turned to him. Her face was different. The adoration was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, practical fury. "My internship," she said, her voice flat. What about your internship?" "You're not an intern. You're an associate." "My associate position, Greg. The one at Sterling Price. The one you got for me. It was restructured. I was just restructured. Out of a job." "Sienna, baby, listen." He reached for her. She flinched, pulling away. Don't you baby me. I just got a call from HR. I'm fired. And then I get a call from some woman. A lawyer. Caroline's lawyer. No. Some other lawyer from DGH Apex Logistics. She told me that my fast-track hire at Sterling Price had been facilitated by a DGH subsidiary as a favor, and that favor was now rescinded. They own Sterling Price. No, Greg said, confused. They're just a client. Are they, Greg? Sienna's eyes were wide with a terror. He recognized it was the same one he was feeling, because the lawyer said that DGH holds the primary commercial lease on Sterling Price's building, that they're their biggest corporate client through 6 different shell companies. She said, "We own the pasture, Greg. We just let him think he was the bull." She said, "Greg." "Yes, she told me to tell you that." And then she told me that my work visa, I'm Canadian. Greg, did you even know that was sponsored by that subsidiary? And it's being revoked. I have 30 days. I have to go home. She looked at him, and all the black opium and leather and ambition had vanished. She was just a 25-year-old girl who had gambled on the wrong horse. You lost, she whispered, her voice breaking. I picked the loser. Sienna, I can fix this. I have savings. We can. Savings, Greg, we're in a $40,000 a month penthouse. That sofa is $30,000. Your savings are gone. It's gone. Don't you get it? You didn't just lose your job. You're radioactive. You're nothing. The nothing hit him harder than loser. And another thing, she said, her voice turning to pure venom. Your credit card, the one you gave me for the apartment, it was declined. For the sofa. For the goddamn groceries. Greg pulled out his phone. He opened his First Union Commerce Bank app. His accounts, his checking, his brokerage, account frozen, pending review. He stared. They can't do this. They did, Greg. Sienna zipped up her last suitcase. I guess your wife wasn't as comfortable as you thought. She walked to the door. Oh, and the co-op board they called. Arthur Pierce. He said their pre-approval was what did he call it? A conditional income offer. And since your income is, 0, they're terminating the lease. We have to be out by the end of the week. Not 30 days. 5 days. Sienna, wait. She paused at the door. You know, Greg, I feel sorry for her. Your wife. Not because you left her, but because she had to be married to you for 15 years. You're not a lion. You're not a master of the universe. You're just a pet. And you bit the wrong owner. Goodbye, Greg. The door to the penthouse clicked shut. He was alone. In a $40,000 a month apartment he couldn't afford, with a $30,000 sofa he didn't own, and a bank account that was frozen solid. The city skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to be laughing at him. The squeeze was complete. He was financially and socially suffocated. For 3 days, Greg Shaw was a ghost in his own life. The silence of the $40,000 a month penthouse was absolute, broken only by his own frantic, useless phone calls. His bank accounts at First Union Commerce remained frozen. A polite, detached manager informed him it was a risk management flag related to a pending legal matter they were not at liberty to discuss. He tried to retain a new lawyer, but a digital iron curtain slammed down the moment he mentioned the names Davenport and divorce. No one was available. No one was a good fit. No one had a conflict of interest. He was blacklisted. He had to be out of the Astra Tower by Friday. He'd been forced to sell his Vacheron Constantin watch, his Chicago watch, to a back-alley jeweler for a fraction of its value just to have cash. Cash for what? A motel desperation finally clawed through his paralysis. He had to see her. He had to see Caroline. If he could just talk to her, explain, apologize, beg. He didn't even know. He just knew he couldn't be. This. He took a taxi to Greenwich to the house. As he pulled up, he was stunned. The perfect manicured lawn was a sea of mud scarred by heavy truck tires. A massive industrial dumpster sat in the driveway where his BMW used to be. The front door was open, replaced by a sheet of plywood. He walked inside, his stomach clenching. The house was gutted. The sweeping staircase was covered in tarps. Wires hung from the ceiling. The white marble kitchen. Caroline's pride was gone, just exposed studs and plumbing. It wasn't a home. It was a demolition site. "Caroline!" he called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous dead air. "She's not here." Greg spun around. Harrison. Harry Davenport Jr. was standing in the archway of what used to be the dining room. He wasn't in a suit. He was wearing jeans work boots and a black pullover holding a rolled-up set of blueprints. What did you do?" Greg stammered. "What is this tool?" "Renovating," Harry said, his voice casual, as if they'd run into each other at a bar. Caroline never liked the flow. She found the whole suburban Tudor vibe suffocating. Your word, I believe. Where is she? Where is Thomas? Paris, Harry said, tapping the blueprints against his leg. With my mother. Thomas loves the new apartment overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Funny he hasn't asked about you once. The casual, devastating cruelty of it stole Greg's breath. You did this, Greg whispered, gesturing at the ruins of his life. My job, my clients, my bank account. Harry looked at him with an expression of mild curiosity. Did we? I don't think we did anything, Greg. We just undid. We stopped. Harry leaned against a raw 2x4. You're not that smart, are you? You really thought you were a self-made man. He didn't even have to move. The power radiated from him. Let's do the ledger, Greg. Your first big break, that biotech fund that made you junior partner. That was a DGH venture fund. We fed you the intel. We let you discover it to build your reputation. Your clients, Carter Reynolds. My father sits on the Port Authority. One routine audit, and Carter's entire import business gets lost in customs forever. The Taggart brothers. Their logistics carrier, Apex, is us. We just rerouted their supply chain. They were happy to move their money to get their shipments back on track. The bank? Greg whispered, the blood draining from his face. First Union. Harry actually laughed. Oh, that's my favorite. Greg, DGH acquired a 51% controlling stake in FUCB in 2019. It was a portfolio diversification. My father sits on the risk committee. Your frozen account. That's just standard procedure when a high-risk individual, say someone with massive sudden income losses and a pending divorce from a high-value asset. Well, the bank has a fiduciary duty to protect itself. We're just protecting ourselves. From you. It was all one system. They didn't just have money. They owned the board. And Sienna, Greg said, the last piece falling into place. My sister, Harry's voice hardened, is a very detailed person when she's upset. Caroline was heartbroken for about a day. Then she got organized. She's a Davenport. She made a list. She found Ms. Hayes's Canadian visa was sponsored by a subcontractor. Of ours. A simple phone call. Greg's legs gave out. He sat down on the tarp-covered stairs. You built me up. Just to do this. No, Harry said, his voice now cold. We built you up because my sister, my quiet, gentle, brilliant sister, loved you. She saw a spark in you and she begged my father. Help him, Daddy, she said. He just needs a chance. Harry crouched eye level with Greg. And you took that chance, her love, her family's power, and you used it to build a bird bath for a 25-year-old in a tacky penthouse. You were too busy looking at yourself in the reflection of the things we gave you to ever see her. He stood. So no, Greg. We didn't do anything to you. We just stopped holding you up. And you just fell. This is who you are, without us. Harry pulled a check from his pocket. A First Union Commerce Bank check. He tossed it onto Greg's lap. This is $50,000, Harry said. It's from Caroline. She's concerned you'll end up homeless. It's her one failing, the pending legal matter on your other accounts. That's the divorce. Her lawyers are going to argue dissipation of marital assets, the penthouse Sienna, the Italian sofa. They're going to enjoy taking it out of out of nothing. 50,000. Greg looked at the check. It was charity. Take the check, Greg. Get a bus ticket. Go to Arizona. I don't care. But you're uninvestable in New England. You're no longer associated with the family. Consider this a social and financial deletion. Harry walked to the plywood-covered door, then paused. She didn't just gut the house, Greg. She's renaming the hospital wing, taking your name off the plaque. He left. Greg Shaw sat in the hollowed-out shell of his former life in a cloud of plaster dust, holding a charity check. He hadn't been defeated in a war. He had simply been erased. Pride Gregory Shaw learned doesn't vanish in a single explosive moment. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, a slow, agonizing erosion that leaves you hollow. The $50 and $1,000 from Caroline was the first and most exquisite cut. It was both a lifeline and a final, crushing insult. It was enough money to survive, but not enough to live. It was, as Harry had intended, bus ticket money. He used $5,000 of it to move his expensive suits and textbooks, the artifacts of Gregory Shaw, senior partner, into a bleak metal-doored storage unit in Stamford. He used another $1,500 to rent a room. Not an apartment. A room. It was in a shared house in Bridgeport, a town he used to fly over. His roommate was a 22-year-old line cook who played video games at high volume and left instant noodle cups in the sink. The rest of the money he hoarded, watching the balance with a terror he'd never known. He, a man who used to move 7-figure blocks of assets, was now afraid to buy the premium brand of toilet paper. He had to get a job. He printed his resume. Senior partner, Sterling Price Investments. MBA, Wharton. Proven track record. He walked into a local branch of a regional bank. He was overqualified, and he knew it. The branch manager, a woman in her late 40s, looked at his resume with wide eyes. Mr. Shaw, this is quite a resume. Why? Why did you leave Sterling Price? It was a personal conflict, Greg said, trying to sound dignified. A disagreement with the board. I see. She typed his name into her computer. Her face, which had been skeptical, suddenly became very still. She read her screen for a long, silent minute. "Mr. Shaw," she said, her tone changing to a crisp, professional chill. "I'm afraid we don't have any positions available that fit your profile." "My profile?" "My profile is excellence." "Your profile, sir," she said, not looking at him, "is flagged in the central compliance system. We are not able to move forward with your application." He didn't need to ask. Isabella, Harry, the Davenports. They hadn't just blacklisted him socially. They had put a permanent digital mark on his name. He was, in the language of finance, a toxic asset. He tried headhunters, the ones who used to call him weekly, poaching him for firms in New York and London. The initial calls were warm. "Greg, good to hear from you." Then came the typing pause. "Ah, Greg, you know the market is very tight right in this quarter. Very specific. I don't seem to have anything at all. Let me get back to you." They never got back to him. Weeks turned into a month. The money was dwindling. He was forced to sell the suits from the storage unit. He took them to a high-end consignment shop where the owner sniffed. "Zegna. Very nice. But this power look is a little dated." Greg, the man with the $3,000 suits, walked out with $800. He was, in every sense of the word, liquidated. He finally found a job. He had to. He saw a "now hiring" sign in the window of an Enterprise rent-a-car counter at the airport. The manager, a kid in his late 20s named Scott, didn't ask for a resume. He just needed someone who could wear a tie and upsell. "The job is simple," Scott explained. "They reserve the Ford Focus, you get 'em into the Suburban, and you sell the insurance. The insurance is the whole game. You get me, you get me?" "I can sell," Greg whispered. So Gregory Shaw, Wharton MBA, now worked at the airport. He was, to his own disgust, good at it. He'd get a tired family and say, "Sir, I see you reserved the compact, but with you 3 kids and this luggage, you're just not going to fit. I can upgrade you to the minivan for just $30 more." He was a shark, still a shark, but now he was in a puddle fighting over minnows. His pride, it was gone. He was just a survivor. The crushing, the real final crushing, came 3 months later on a cold, rainy Tuesday. A private jet, a Gulfstream G650, landed at the signature FBO across the tarmac. Scott, the manager, was vibrating with excitement. "Shaw, go get the black Escalade. The whale is here. Detail it, now, and don't screw this up." Greg detailed the car. He vacuumed the carpets. He wiped the windows with a cloth, his cheap polyester tie flapping in the wind. He drove it across the tarmac to the sleek private hangar. The Gulfstream's stairs descended, and she walked out. Caroline. But it wasn't the Caroline he knew. The beige cashmere was gone. She was wearing black leather pants, a cream silk blouse, and sunglasses so large they covered half her face. Her hair was down, blowing in the wind. She looked like a movie star. She was laughing, her head tilted back. Behind her was another man. Not Harry. This man was tall, with graying hair at the temples, wearing a beautiful unstructured linen jacket. He was laughing too. He put his hand on the small of Caroline's back, and she leaned into his touch. Greg just froze. He stood there in his ill-fitting black pants, his plastic Greg name tag, holding the car door open. Caroline saw him. The laugh died in her throat. She stopped. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes met his. There was no anger, no hate, no sadness, not even pity. There was nothing. Just a brief, mild flicker of recognition. The same look you'd give a cashier you vaguely remembered from a store you'd visited 7 years ago. The European man looked at Greg. "Is this the car?" His accent was French. "Yes," Caroline said. Her voice wasn't shaking. It was smooth. She reached into her purse, a crocodile Birkin bag Greg noted with a dying part of his brain, and pulled out a roll of cash. She peeled off a single, crisp $100 bill. She handed it to Greg. "Thank you for waiting," she said. That was the crushing. Not the job, not the money, not the apartment. This. Nothingness. This transaction. He wasn't her ex-husband. He wasn't the man who broke her heart. He was the car rental guy. His hand shook as he took the money. We need your license and a credit card," he whispered, the Enterprise script coming out of his mouth on autopilot. The Frenchman laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Oh no, it is all handled. By DGH, of course." He put his arm around Caroline's shoulder. "Come, chérie, let's go. I want to show you the house." They got into the Escalade. The car Greg had vacuumed. They drove away. Greg Shaw stood on the tarmac in the rain, holding the $100 bill. It was a tip. From the woman he'd thought he was too good for. He finally understood. He hadn't lost. He had never even been in the game. In the end, it wasn't a corporate takeover. It wasn't a dramatic public confrontation. The crushing of Gregory Shaw's pride was a simple, quiet, soul-crushing deletion. He thought he was the lion, but he was just a logo on a letterhead that the Davenports decided to redesign. Caroline's family didn't destroy him with anger. They destroyed him with indifference. They simply took back everything they had loaned him, his clients, his status, his reputation, his credit, and left him with the only thing he truly owned, his own arrogance. And it turns out that's not worth very much on the open market. What do you think? Was this a real-life story of consequences, or did the family go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If your jaw is on the floor right now, please do not keep this story to yourself. The best revenge is living well, but the best stories are the ones that are shared. Like this video if you believe he got what he deserved. Share it with a friend who needs to see what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones. And most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon. You think this story was wild? You have no idea what I have coming next.